With the summer break for amateur nationals behind us, it's time to refocus on pro motocross as the series heads to its most iconic location. As the series went into hiatus at Washougal, Chase Sexton carted 1-1 moto scores again. Without Jet to push the pace, as has been said 1,000 times already, Chase Sexton can take his time, letting the race come to him in the latter stages of the moto. For the second time this season, KTM's Aaron Plessinger led almost the entire way, only to have his teammate snatch away the victory in the waning moments. With a 7-moto win streak, his third straight overall and fourth of the season, Sexton is tied, for now, with the absent defending champion, Jet Lawrence, for the most wins in 2024. Hunter Lawrence failed to make the podium for the first time in his 450 career, 8 races into the season, marking the first time since the final race of 2021 that a Honda rider hadn't been on the podium. Chase now has a 28-point gap over Hunter and is more than 70 points ahead of the rest of the field. And speaking of fields, hidden among the rolling hills near the town New Berlin is one of the international sport's most hallowed grounds. Unadilla Motocross began racing in 1969 after its founder, Ward Robinson, fell in love with dirt bike racing after seeing a Hare Scrambles event. Now in its 55th year of racing, the facility originally called the Unadilla Valley Sports Center was built on a former dairy farm, giving it a distinctly European feel. Or maybe it simply retains the aura of so many World Championship events. Unadilla has almost inarguably the richest history in American motocross. The track's rolling natural terrain layout sprawls out over 55 acres of classic New York countryside, while many of the original track features remain: Gravity Cavity and the Screw U, sadly now called the Wall in this politically correct world. Unadilla has evolved over the years, for both good and bad, to respond to the changes within the sport. Once an unmowed grass track, only ridden on one weekend a year. Then, motocross paradise. Later, after both the grass and the topsoil were long gone, a rocky, slippery mess throughout the 90s and on. And now, having been rejuvenated by a second generation, Ward's son Greg. If not for the precipitous drop-off in viewership for this channel since the series moved from stadiums to great outdoors, a guy might have looked forward to years to come, producing Moto Filter in Unadilla history. This will have to do. The facility hosted Trans-AMA races before the AMA Pro Motocross Championship even existed, and has run a bit of everything since 1969, including the 1987 Motocross Designations, the first time the event was held in the United States. The first national held at Unadilla took place in 1972, and it was won by Gary Jones on a Yamaha. The national tour went to Unadilla for the next 5 years, but after 1977, instead of American nationals, Unadilla one-upped its many Trans-AMA races of the 70s by becoming the home of the United States Grand Prix for the World Championship Series throughout the 80s. All in, Unadilla hosted Trans-AMA races from 1970 through 1978, Trans-USA races in 79, 80, and 81, the 250cc USGP from 1978 through 1992, and a round of the U.S. Nationals every year since 1989. Intertwined with Unadilla history is Hurricane Bob Hanna. He battled with Roger DeCoster there in the 70s in Trans-AMA races, and who closed out his illustrious career as the then winningest motocross racer ever in his final pro race in 1989. Betwixt the two were epic rides against former Honda teammates Johnny O'Mara and Ricky Johnson, among others, a full decade after those legendary Trans-AMA bar fights. In 1986, the Hurricane fought it out with the O-Show in a great race that ended prematurely for Johnny. And after 10 years of trying, Hanna finally had his first actual win at Unadilla.
Johnny O'Mara. The Team Honda rider showed why as he took the lead early in Moto number 1. Meanwhile, crowd favorite Bob Hanna, who had never won at Unadilla, was passing everyone in sight after suffering a mid-pack start. The Hurricane eventually charged all the way to second, but by the time he got there, O'Mara was long gone and out of sight. The second moto was a different story. Within one lap, the Hurricane had closed to within striking distance of the first moto winner, O'Mara. When the pair shot off the top of the 60-foot drop, O'Mara's lead was less than a bike length. When they reappeared, O'Mara was a bike length behind. The race, however, was far from over. After following Hanna for several laps, O'Mara found an inside line and regained the top position. The O-Show gradually began pulling away and appeared to have matters under control. Then, with only a half a lap to go, O'Mara slowed and came to a halt. The Honda rider with an empty gas tank could only watch as Hanna powered by. When he took the checkered flag, Hanna, who had not seen O'Mara sitting on the track, thought the cheers of the crowd were for the runners-up honors. Hanna, though, to the delight of his Unadilla fans, had finally added a Unadilla win to his long list of credits.
2 years later, Hanna was still at it. He was living on a Rick Johnson world.
Shot was number 2, Pekka Väkkönen from Finland, with Britain's Rob Herring close behind. Number 38, Team Yamaha's Mickey Diamond was the only American in the top 5. Still on the opening lap, the unforgiving Unadilla track claimed victim number 1. That tumble left Rob Herring with the lead, followed by Mickey Diamond. Meanwhile, number 18, Rick Johnson was working through traffic. When Dutchman Gert-Jan van Doorn took a slow line entering Gravity Cavity, Johnson drew alongside. The pre-race favorite had the better line out of the cavity and easily won the drag race to the corner. On the other hand, American world champion hopeful Rodney Smith, number 31, won nothing at all in Moto number 1. The Suzuki-mounted Californian, based in Italy, was suffering an ear infection that kept him off balance. That spill was the first of several problems that kept Smith from scoring points. Meanwhile, Johnson was still on the gas. The Team Honda rider caught Diamond at Gravity Cavity, his favorite place to pass, then jumped into second place. From that point, nothing could stop the fired-up Johnson. He quickly caught and put pressure on race leader Rob Herring, and the pressure paid off. From the bottom of that 60-foot gorge, only Johnson emerged. Herring had crashed and was out of action. With Johnson alone in front, all eyes were glued on Hanna. Instead of tiring as many thought he would, the elder statesman of motocross and Unadilla's favorite sons got stronger and faster. And to the delight of the highly partisan Unadilla crowd, passed Diamond to move into second. The American sweep of Moto number 1 was complete. Johnson, Hanna, and Diamond. The top European, Gert-Jan van Doorn from the Netherlands, umbrellas, raincoats, and darkening skies greeted Moto number 2. If the rain continued, the Unadilla track would soon be a quagmire. The whole shot went to Rick Ryan from San Jose, California. Pekka Väkkönen was second, with Rick Johnson close to the front. Behind them, the rest of the pack sorted themselves out, and the rain came to a halt. The track was slick, but there would be no mud race today. Under the clearing skies, Johnson had moved to second and had drawn a bead on Ryan. With that pass, the magic man of motocross moved into the number 1 spot. Hanna's start in the second moto was only slightly better than in moto number 1. The veteran, though, was not about to give up. The rain may have stopped, but the hurricane was just beginning to blow. Hanna clawed his way through the pack until he was 4th, right behind early race leader Rick Ryan. Ryan never had a chance as the hurricane was up to gale force. Second place, Mickey Diamond fared no better. When the hurricane winds reached him, he was blown off the course. For the second time in as many motos, the Americans would finish 1, 2, 3 against the best the rest of the world had to offer. Series points leader John Vandenberg from Holland was the top European scorer with moto finishes of 5th and 6th. Good enough for 4th overall. Overall honors for the day fell to arguably the best motocrosser in the world. Johnson electrified the crowd with his wide-open, daring style that earned the El Cajon rider both moto wins. The loudest applause, though, was reserved for Bob Hanna. The Hurricane reached into his bag of tricks one more time and had the crowd rocking and rolling.
But perhaps the aging Hurricane's greatest day at Unadilla came on an RM125 at the 1987 Motocross des Nations.
As you can see, conditions at the 87 event were deplorable. Yet the Motocross des Nations, held on U.S. soil for the first time, brought together the best riders in the world for one major team confrontation. As far as the fans that braved the elements were concerned, they couldn't care less who showed up from Europe. Their eyes were focused and hearts enamored to the American contingent. Nationalism permeated the air. The chant of USA, USA could be heard echoing amongst the hills, along with the whine of two-stroke engines. U.S. honors were entrusted to Bob Hurricane Hanna, Rick Magic Johnson, Wardy Jeff Ward. How did they fare? Well, we'll find out right now. This week, on the Best of American Motorcycle Racing, we'll look back at the 1987 Motocross des Nations from Unadilla Valley Sports Center in New Berlin, New York. The rounds of the Unadilla paddock were of a continental variety. The United Nations of Motocross had come to America. The format for the 87 Motocross des Nations was a complicated one. As far as the on-track competition was concerned, the 87 Motocross des Nations was billed as a battle of 3 powerhouse motocross countries. Let's take a look at those teams, starting out with the American squad, the host team, and the favorites to take their 7th straight team championship. Bob Hanna rode in the 125 class aboard a Suzuki. Hanna needs no introduction. Simply stated, he's both the winningest rider in American motocross history and no doubt the most popular. Joining Hanna on the U.S. team, riding a 500cc Kawasaki, was Jeff Ward. Ward is from Mission Viejo, California, and at that time was a 4-time U.S. national champion. Rounding out the team, Rick Johnson from El Cajon, California. Johnson, a member of Team Honda, competed in the 250 class. 2 European countries figured to give the U.S. squad the most trouble. The Belgian team with 2 world champions, George Jobet in the 500 class and Eric Gabors in the 250 class, were rated extremely tough. Their 125 rider, Mark Velkeniers, finished 9th in the 87 125 World Championship. The Dutch team was headed by former Unadilla 250 Grand Prix winner, Kees van der Ven. He rode the 500 class. 1987 125cc world champion John Vandenberg rode a 250 for the Dutch team. Former 125 rider Davy Strebos rode in the 125 class. In addition to the Belgians and the Dutch, there were 14 other countries, all with excellent riders, shooting for the World Championship title that had gone to the U.S. for the previous 6 years. To win, they'd have to tame one of the roughest tracks in the world, Unadilla. When it's dry, it's tough and unforgiving. When it's muddy and slippery, it borders on impossible. The first moto was for 125s and 500s. The 250 riders watched this one from the sidelines. The gate drops. The 41st annual Motocross des Nations, the World Team Championship of Motocross, was underway on a muddy, slippery Unadilla track. Before things could get sorted out, there was a pileup in the first corner. The mud had already taken its first victims. Hanna on the 125 and Ward on the 500 snuck through on the inside and barely avoided the carnage. Number 10, Kurt Lundqvist from Finland on a 500 was the early leader. He was followed by number 43, Case Vanderveen, also on a 500. And there, number 45, that's Davy Strebos from the Netherlands. He led the 125 class. There's Bob Hanna. He's being passed by George Jobet. And look at the roost from Jobet's rear wheel. It splattered Hanna from the top of his helmet all the way down his flak jacket. You had to feel sorry for the riders out on a track like Unadilla in the mud and the rain. From the opening lap, Jeff Ward rode without goggles. That was his way of coping. That's Davy Strebos trying to pick up his bike in the slippery Unadilla mud. Strebos was the leader in the 125 class. That spill by the Dutchman really jumbled up the standings. As a result, the new 125 class leader was Frenchman Jean-micheal Bale. Five-time 500cc world champion Roger DeCoster, now team manager for the U.S. squad, thinks Bale will someday be number one in the world. Time will tell. If you've just joined us, this is not Mudbug Racing. You're watching the final laps of the first of 3 motos at the 1987 Motocross des Nations. You know, the Motocross des Nations has been going on for 43 years. It's acknowledged as the Olympics of motocross. Motocross des Nations' first visit to the US of A. We're on the final lap of moto number 1. Rider number 3, American Bob Hanna, is currently running 4th in the 125 class. Now, 4th place under normal circumstances is not too shabby, but this was team competition, and the teams from Belgium and the Netherlands were putting it all together. Dutch rider Case Vanderveen was leading until he was passed by Belgium's 500cc world champion, George Jobet. Jeff Ward, the American entry in the 500 class, was inside of the leaders and was holding down the number 3 position. Unfortunately, the laps wore down, and he could not improve upon his position. Belgian rider George Jobet crossed the finish line with Case Vanderveen, the Dutch rider, in tow. Finishing 3rd in the first moto was American Jeff Ward. Welcome back. The riders for Moto 2 are on the line. This moto would consist of 125s and 250s. For the U.S., it was Rick Johnson on the 250, and back for his second ride of the day, Bob Hanna on the 125. The gate went down, and moto number 2 was underway. The rain was still coming down. The mud at the first turn was deep and slippery, but the entire field made it through. Both U.S. riders were close to the front. Rick Johnson wasn't messing around on this day. During the 86 and 87 seasons, Johnson was the dominant force in U.S. motocross. The Honda star took the lead in the second moto, and despite the conditions, began pulling away from the rest of the field. That's Davy Strebos, the 125 rider from the Netherlands. He was leading the 125 class, but Unadilla's favorite son, Bob Hurricane Hanna, took over. With Strebos out of the running, the team from the Netherlands suffered a serious setback. As in most sports, one player's problem is another player's success. And in this case, Bob Hanna and the U.S. team were the benefactors. As a result of Strebos' problem, Bob Hanna and Rick Johnson were leading their respective classes. You can bet, however, that neither Hanna or Johnson were feeling overconfident in these treacherous conditions. Sometimes you can try too hard. Gabors went down. The muddy Unadilla track was claiming even world champions as its victims. The question was whether Gabors would be able to hold on to second. The answer was no. John Vandenberg, the Dutch 250 rider, bobbled, and Bob Hanna moved into the lead in the 125 class, and an amazing 3rd overall. The Hurricane was putting together an unbelievable ride. One of the reasons many feel Hanna is the best that ever laced on a motocross boot. Bob Hurricane Hanna has been special for anyone who derives pleasure from watching the best in action. Just ask the fans who attended the 87 Motocross des Nations. Welcome back to ESPN's Best of American Motorcycle Racing. I'm Bruce Flanders, and we're in the closing stages of Moto number 2 of the 1987 Motocross des Nations. On the muddy Unadilla track, the battle continued among the 3 countries that were favored. The host team, the U.S., Belgium, and the Netherlands. In Moto number 2, however, it was all Team America. Even though you cannot tell who's who, underneath the mud is number 2, Rick Johnson, leading the 250 contingent and overall moto leader. There's Bob Hanna. He's first in the 125 class, and believe it or not, 3rd overall. Back to the action of the 87 event and the Johnson-Hanna American 1-2. Johnson and Hanna were in the driver's seat, but as we have seen earlier, anything could happen. After the first moto, the U.S. team found themselves behind the Belgians and the Dutch. To get back into contention, they needed a 100% effort, and that's what they got from Johnson and Hanna. The rain was still coming down, but it didn't dampen the spirits of the huge Unadilla crowd. They were cheering for Hanna. They were cheering for Johnson. As both riders rounded every corner, accelerated down every straightaway, the chant of USA filled the air. Johnson took the checkered flag in Moto number 2. He won the 250 class and was the overall Moto winner. A little further back, Bob Hanna won the 125 class. Moto 3 would decide the team championship. Moto 2 was over, but down on the track, a muddy Bob Hanna was mobbed by the Unadilla faithful. The chant was Hanna, Hanna. The ride by Hanna on a 125 in the mud was one of the greatest exhibitions in motocross history. He bested the majority of the world's best on a machine only half the displacement of his rivals. Truly amazing. In the early going of Moto 3, Team USA's Rick Johnson was liking it better than anyone else, including Joe Bay. The Honda rider from El Cajon, California, shot into the lead. He knew that if either he or Jeff Ward could win their class, then the U.S. would sew up their 7th straight Motocross Nations title. The pressure was on. Of the Dutch team, however, were still alive. Kees van der Ven on a KTM was leading the 500 class. In the 250 class, his teammate John Vandenberg was running second behind Johnson. During the final laps, Johnson slowed slightly to guard his lead. Conversely, Vandenberg threw caution to the wind. The Dutch team needed to win both classes for the overall championship. Jeff Ward, meanwhile, had closed on Kees van der Ven, but did not appear to be making a 100% effort to catch the Dutchman. Was Ward holding back? Afterwards, it was learned that Ward was instructed to hold his position and not endanger the impending overall victory. At this point in the moto, Rick Johnson, Bob Hanna, and Jeff Ward were less than one lap away from claiming the team title. For the 7th straight year, American riders would reign supreme over the best the rest of the world has to offer. The 1987 win was possibly the best ever. It was on American soil in front of thousands of American fans. There's the checkered flag for Rick Johnson. With his fist in the air, Johnson clutched the U.S. victory in his hand. Ward held his position as requested, and the fans were rewarded with the sweet victory.
1995 was a glitch in Jeremy McGrath's outdoor championship season after going down early in the first moto.
Along with former motocross champion David Bailey. And David, what can I say? Jeremy keeps racking up those wins and rolling up the points.
Well, he does. He's been pretty clever about it. He's ridden pretty consistent. And, last year he didn't have the conditioning. A lot of people didn't think he really cared that much about the outdoors. Well, this year he obviously does. And after a convincing win last week and some of the worst heat we've seen all year, he's silenced a lot of those critics.
Well, what about Jeff Hemming? Here is a rider who's doing everything he can. He's winning motos. He's picking up points, yet he's in second place.
Right. Well, I think Jeremy just has a little extra, and also a year of experience in the 250s under his belt. We've got to remember that Hemming, this is his first season, and he's sitting in a place where if anything happens to Jeremy, he could win a championship.
Well, thank you, Art. There you see Jeremy McGrath, the current points leader, leading Jeff Hemming by 18 as we head into this. Jeremy with 4 overall victories on the season.
Jeff Hemming doesn't have a motorcycle to ride.
I wonder what's going on there.
I don't know. You can see there's a little bit of rain starting to come down. That's the reason for the umbrellas, of course. And possibly just started. Maybe he wants to choose a different tire, or it could be anything, but I'm assuming that's what it would be.
And you can also see the hand guards that a lot of the competitors were in, especially Mike Kadraus. Remember, last year his run for the championship was ended when he was roosted by a rock and knocked himself out for quite a while. We are getting set for the start of Moto number 1 here at Unadilla. Ready, the signboard goes down. One mention, Greg Albertine, the 3-time world champion, not on the line. He broke a bone in his wrist at Troy, and the gate is down, and there they go. Coming around the first turn, looks like Jeremy McGrath, who's out in front. Look at Larry Ward on the outside. Mike Jones also in there. Jeff Hemming off to a clean start as everybody makes it around the first turn. But look at this, David. Ward quickly on the first lap gets around Jeremy, but Jeremy says he wants it back. They get together. McGrath goes down, and Ward scoots out into the lead. Boy, what a mess right there as you see the riders, even Damon Bradshaw having problems negotiating that hay bale. And look at Jeremy. He's all the way back, probably 38th or 39th. He has a long way to go to ride his way back to the front spot. There's a look at your leader, Larry Ward, and look at Jeff Hemming. Second in the points coming in here. He was trailing McGrath by 18, and right now, if this race ended, he would pick up a bunch. In fact, he would actually take over the points lead, but there's still 30 minutes to go in this moto, plus 2 laps, so McGrath has plenty of time to work his way back toward the front. Look at Jeremy mired back in the field, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's already made up, what, about 15, 20 spots. That's pretty amazing.
Well, Jeremy's obviously capable of running a much faster pace than these back markers, and like I said, because of the different lines, you see he's able to go pretty much anywhere he wants to on the racetrack.
Yeah, trying to chase him down. Now we get back up front to Ward. And speaking of chasing him down, look at Jeff Emig. He has closed the gap. Remember the last time? Oh, look at the rear wheel wash out and around. That's pretty tough to make up time when you're getting knocked around like that, isn't it, David?
Well, you can expect that on a racetrack like this. Probably the roughest racetrack there is. I mean, Southwick is rough in terms just because of the sand and those whoop-de-doos, but here the bumps aren't consistent. You got some round ones, you got some sharp ones, you got rocks in there. It's real challenging, and right there you can just see how out of shape you can get. These guys are aggressive. You can see they're going for it.
Well, Emig's right now going for the lead, but he's going to have to find a way to get around Larry Ward. You know, a great crowd on hand here this weekend watching. Look at Emig is going on the outside right there. I guess a little bit smoother right there, but he still can't get the drive off the turn as they come back up the hill.
Well, as you start down that downhill, actually, I remember the first time I ever came here, I couldn't believe the track actually went down that hill. You can't believe how steep it is. And just found a smoother line, find another smoother line right there, but he had to go wider, and Larry Ward takes it back.
ESPN Speedway welcomes you back to New Berlin, New York, Unadilla, where we have a great battle up front for the lead. 4 riders in contention for the top spot, and there you see the 5th rider coming into play. That's the defending national champion, Mike LaRocco. But right now, Larry Ward is out front. Jeff Emig trying to find the line, but he's also got to worry about protecting second because John Dowd's right behind him. Or do you worry about protecting second this early?
Well, you just want to protect yourself from the roost coming off of Larry Ward for one thing, but you got to take into consideration when you take a different line. John Dowd's in striking distance, so if you take the slower line, Dowd could slide in there and take the spot away. Also, LaRocco won both motos here last year, so if Emig can get around Larry Ward right now and check out, maybe it'd be tougher for LaRocco to catch him.
He's trying it right there. He tried to dive inside to make the move into the lead, and look, they're neck and neck, but Emig is going to have a slight advantage. They come into the right-hander, and Jeff Emig makes the pass, reaches up, wipes off the vision on his goggles. Emig has now moved into first place. Ward is in second, and look back in that battle for third down, trying to hold off Mike Kudrowski, but Jeff Emig has taken over the point here in the early going. By far, this is the best moto so far this year. Jeff Emig out in front. Remember, his first year on the 250s, he's second in points, and you look at that and you say, hey, where's Jeremy McGrath? Well, Jeremy had a little incident with Larry Ward on the first lap, went down, lost a bunch of spots, but he's busy trying to work his way through the field. Top 5 riders are almost nose to tail, you could say, and John Dowd still doing a pretty good job holding off Mike LaRocco. There's your leader, Jeff Emig, followed by Larry Ward, Kudrowski, then Dowd, then LaRocco. Go back a little further in the pack, Jeremy McGrath, who had worked his way into 9th just before the break. He's trying to work his way around Kyle Lewis. Kyle also off with a pretty good start, but remember, Jeremy got knocked down as he went into Larry Ward early on in this moto, all the way back to last place, and he's had to make his way back through the pack. He's gotten back up into the points, and Emig out in front right now. I don't have my calculator, but I think Emig would either close the gap considerably or maybe even take over the lead as it stands right now if the moto were to end. Well, right now, Emig is out in front, but he's yet to really put on a big lead. But, David, he looks like he's riding really well.
Well, I just like the lines that he's choosing. You saw he just kind of hopped over that hole right there, and he's just putting the bike where he wants. You see right there, he's riding right next to the fence post, looking for grass and smoother lines, and it's paying off.
Back at Unadilla, closing stages, moto number 1. While it has to go down the books, is one of the most exciting motos all year long. Jeff Emig continues to be your leader. Remember, Jeremy McGrath off to a bad start. He is working his way through the pack, but all eyes focused on Emig. Well, I'm sure that Emig is aware that McGrath is back in the pack and that this is a perfect opportunity for him to make up some points.
Well, it's nice when you're leading the moto and then you come around and give you a signal board that McGrath crashed in the first lap. Puts a pretty big smile on your face when you're trying to close into the points lead.
Well, right now, McGrath is in a heated battle. 7th and 8th is up for grabs. And McGrath takes the inside line and gets around Dobb and moves into that 7th place. And David, let's do a little points math right now. 7th place, Emig is running first. That's a differential of 11 points. That would cut McGrath's lead in the championship standings to just 7. Get ready to start the final lap of moto number 1.
And the fact that LaRocco's running second right here is that's even better news because that puts Jeremy back one more position. Remember, we've touched on it before, the fact that when LaRocco finishes in between Emig and McGrath, he really affects the points.
Well, McGrath, of course, got off to that good start, then went down and had to fight his way back. He has fought his way back into the top 10, but he's still going to lose some ground in the point standings to this man right here, Jeff Emig, trying to notch another moto victory. I've been very impressed with the way he has performed since coming up from the 125s to the 250s. Checkered flag is out, and Jeff Emig picks up the win here at Unadilla in Moto number 1 with a very, very good performance. Welcome back to Unadilla, and tell you what, folks, at the end of the 125, it poured rain of monsoon for about 5 minutes, and they're trying to get the track back into shape here for Moto number 2.
Jeremy, he seems to have done pretty good in the mud, but I think riders like John Dowd, possibly LaRocco, they really seem to shine in the mud, and Jeff Emig right there.
Let's see who gets the whole shot this time. We're just about set to drop the gate on the start of Moto number 2.
John Dowd looked like he missed a shift right there, so he's already well back in the pack.
Well, John Dowd had a great ride in Moto number 1, and look at that. Jeremy McGrath scoots out to the front. Look at Damon Bradshaw. As Jeremy went wide, Bradshaw gets the whole shot, and look how covered with mud these riders are headed into the first turn. And look at Damon. He is clean. This is definitely you don't want to follow right now, do you?
No, you don't.
Oh, look at that. Bradshaw gets squirrely, comes off the bike, and it wasn't quite a face plant. I don't know what kind of a plant you would call that, but Bradshaw goes down and McGrath squirts out in front. There you've got a good shot of Jeff Emig, and just look at all the mud, and coming around him, that was LaRocco, wasn't it, to pass him for
looks like LaRocco just had a good line, squared it, kind of like what we saw in the riding tip. Moving up the inside, you can see he's trying to reach up and clear his vision while he's riding through this mess, and it looked like he might have lost that position back to Emig.
Yeah, Emig gets around LaRocco. Trying to chase down Kyle Lewis to take over the second spot. Remember, LaRocco finished second in Moto number 1. McGrath is up in the lead right now. He finished 5th in Moto number 1. So LaRocco, if he can nail down that second spot, he can come away with the overall victory. Jeremy McGrath so far is having a pretty nice ride as he is out in front. In fact, he's got a really nice lead on everybody. We talked about how the points differential between Emig and McGrath was narrowed to 9 points after the first moto. Now it's Jeremy's turn to make some of that back up. The white flag is out here at Unadilla for the final lap of Mudbath 95. No kidding, checkered flag is out, and Jeremy McGrath raises the left hand and says yes. Came away with a victory, going to make up some ground in the points.
Unadilla has also had its more infamous moments and memories. In 2001, defending 125cc national champion Travis Pastrana destroyed the field in the first moto and was running away with the second when he went down hard on the last lap, knocking himself cold.
By winning the first moto, gaining 3 points on Langston, that gave him a 47-point lead in the points race. He could be 50 points ahead. That's the equivalent of 2 full motos once he takes the checkered flag.
Nice cushion to have. You got to look at the effort that Langston's putting in and admire that, but 50 points is pretty tough to make up. Travis was heroic last year coming back from 40. I don't know, Langston's an awesome rider, but coming back to 50, a little bit too much.
Yeah, Travis said he had written himself off, but all he was trying to do was extend the season till the final race and not let Montana get that 50-point lead. Oh, Pastrana went down hard. Can he get back up in time? That's not the new leader. There's the new leader. Langston on the last lap.
Though he continued on with closed course racing for a few more years. That day was the beginning of the end. Pastrana would never win another AMA motocross or supercross race. But perhaps the most memorable crash from Unadilla wasn't Pastrana's solo trip over the bars, but rather James Stewart taking an ill-advised line, landing on Ricky Carmichael's back in 2005. Like Pastrana, Stewart knocked himself out. Ricky was not happy.
What the heck happened out there? You have to ask number 259.
Just 3 races ago, when Jet Lawrence exited the series with a thumb injury, his brother Hunter set as the 450 MX points leader and had also split motos with Sexton. each having beaten each other 5 times in 10 motos. Without Jet, Chase and Hunter seem to be facing a one-on-one championship battle. In the first matchup within that new scenario, Hunter led 14 laps at the first moto at Redbud, repeatedly fighting off pressure from Sexton. But then, with just 2 laps remaining, he lost the handlebars on a bump-strewn downhill and was bucked off his bike. Although able to remount and salvage a second, he hasn't been the same rider since. The crash completely changed the momentum of the series. Sexton is now unbeaten in Jet's absence and is doubtless brimming with confidence. Hunter, conversely, will hope to bounce back from his first race off the podium before the break. But Chase Sexton will be the eventual champion. Is all but forgone. The question might be, with Hunter fading, and Plessinger and Jason Anderson apparently just short of the task. With 6 motos left, and Sexton having won 7 straight, can he win out? That wouldn't approach 22-0, nor 24-0. But 13 straight wins to close down the 2024 outdoor season, it would be damned impressive.
1-1 overalls for the 24-year-old from Illinois.
And hey, if you like this video, please like this video. Maybe we'll tap the subscribe button. Leave a comment if you know how to type. Meanwhile, thanks for watching this.